Hi, welcome back to Ideas Box, and if this is your first time here, then thanks for dropping by. I'm Jimmy, and today's video is another typical repair when you have a small property and have equipment. There's always something which needs fixing. The centrifugal clutch was slipping on our post hole digger, and as I had a spare, I thought it was worth fixing. The main takeaway from this job is not to take for granted that the spare parts you might have are correctly marked. Even if you don't watch the whole video, at least check out the conclusion, which is near the end, where I point out the incorrectly marked part and how I spotted it. Anywho, let's get into it.
This is our petrol post hole drill. I call it the Doctor. I did a repair on the fuel lines a few weeks ago, but the clutch, which is in there, is where would the clutch be? No, the clutch will be up in there. The clutch up in there is slipping, so I'm going to have to pull this apart and see if there's something I can fix. I do have a spare part for it, so let's see if we have to fit that spare part. The first thing I'm going to do is take this off to make it a little bit easier to move around on the workbench, which just involves undoing this here and then just sliding this out. So I'll do that first, that way I'm not wrestling with the length of this while I'm trying to work on the little gearbox in there. So I'll put them aside, make sure I don't lose them, because that's a high tensile bolt, which even though it's not on tensile load, it's under shear load, and high tensile bolts have about 1.5, I think, times the shear load of a standard bolt. So I'm going to get this out. There we go. So I'll get rid of that. That housing in there has the clutch, because this is simply a 90-degree gearbox, this one just here. So I'll take these two out. Just need to spin those two bolts there out. So there's 3 of those socket head bolts out. There's 6mm thread. So I just need a 10mm spanner on that down there. And take this off and take this coupling here off. I wasn't going to bother, but I'm going to have to. I probably could have just done this to start with, but normally I don't take this coupling here out. Get one of my little parts trays to put all the bits in. That way they won't get knocked off. Well, there's less chance they'll get knocked off the bench and off underneath something else that I'll then have to move. Okay, so if I undo that, what does that allow me to do? Does that plate just float on there? It's welded. Alright then. Well, that's not going to help at all. Okay. I'll try and doing these. Now these are different to the other ones, so I'll put them in a different section of the tray. Don't need that long extension though, that's a bit clumsy. Just put that on there. Take all these off. Is that just stuck there with the rubber? It might be. I'll just give that a tap with the. Just going to give that a tap with the dead blow hammer. Yeah, there we go. Beautiful. Oh, that makes it much easier. Okay, these little bushes go through the rubber. Oh, yep. Those little bushes go through the rubber, so you're not compressing the rubber. You're just really taking up the difference between the rubber and the bushes. So I'll put them in my little parts tray. There we go. Now I can get a spanner onto that. There's really only the throttle linkage holding that on there now, and the electrical wire, but that's all right. Here, I'll show you what the problem was. I was trying to get to that one down there, and that was tucked away in behind this, which I'll probably give a bit of a clean. So that's the one I need to get off now. So that should be significantly easier. Oh yeah, look at that. Should have done that to start with. Okay, so I'll just rescue that nut and washer. There they are. they can go with those ones there, that's right. So that was easy. I was honestly expecting that to put up a wee bit of a fight. Now so there's the ring that it grabs to turn the gearbox. You can see that turning, I don't know what reduction that is. It's a worm gear, so it won't turn back the other way, but I turn this there and you can see that it's just turning. So the gearbox actually feels good, and that little clutch, while it's a bit grubby and a bit polished, there's definitely no step in that, definitely. There you go, you can see, there's definitely no step in that, so I don't think that's worn. What I might do is I'll just give that a clean up with some wet and dry while I'm here. So, that leaves us with this actual clutch piece. And it says off that way, but looking at that, I think how am I going to get that off? I think that's wrong. That's saying off, which would make you think that's a left-hand thread, but looking at that thread is definitely running up and off of there, so it's definitely a, let me think, definitely a right-hand thread, yeah, okay. Not sure what to do about that. I might have to make up a thingamajig to get that off. Leave it with me for 5 minutes, I'll see what I come up with. Sometimes with these, what you can do is, I've got my welding jacket on, so I'm going to weld something in a minute. You pull this cord, okay, that's the direction it travels in. Okay, so if it's going to be loaded up, it's going to be loaded up like that. So it's trying to do the thread up, otherwise it would always come undone when it was being run. So if I grab that and I'm loading that up, you think about how that's tightening on. It's going to tighten that way, which means it's got to be a right-hand thread. That's got to be wrong. Let's see if my theory's right. I'll make up this thing. You know what I'm thinking? If it's turning that way, and when this centrifugal clutch slings out and grabs a hold of that collar there to turn that collar, then it's loading it up in that direction, so it's almost like a, yes, so it's loading up in that direction, so it's trying to screw that into it, so it's trying to tighten the thread. I'm pretty sure that's wrong. Just let me make up this tool and we'll see if we can't make this worse. Turn the gas on, don't forget the gas, we've all done it, but try not to forget the gas. And the welder on, that's earthed, yep, okay, let's grab some leather gloves. I know some people think it's okay to weld without gloves, but the amount of UV that is giving off is just insane, and you'll end up with skin cancers or things called solar keratosis, which you've got to watch out for in Australia. So anyway, enough lecturing, let's do this. Just eyeball that's in the centre. Yep. Right, I'll finish that weld now. So I'll grab that. So that's in the centre. So now I'm going to weld two little prongs. I'm going to cut that bolt, weld that the right distance apart. Obviously I'll cut the thread off, cut the head off, and then just weld the two little stubs the right distance apart to pick up those holes in that plate. So I'll weld one. Actually I'll let that cool for a second while I cut this. I've been and compared this to the centrifugal clutch I've got to get off, and I think if I cut these off about that long and weld them on, they'll be pretty right. They'll be hot, so don't grab them. While I wait them to cool down, I'll give you a quick rundown of my welding bench. It's nothing special, but I find that it works. I've got a vise there that I clamp the earth to. There's my welder, which is a really good welder. I've got hooks for things that I might need at reach. Got a brush, small brush, hammer, another wire brush, and there's a ruler. Don't know why there's two. And the pliers normally just hang on there like that, because they're for grabbing hot things to stop me from grabbing them with my hand. There's my little rack for my G-clamps, and the grinders just sit there. Their guards just catch on that. And the grinders just sit there. Their guards just catch on that little piece of C-channel. And yeah, I find that works. I like the way it's a mesh bench, because that way all the grindings and rubbish and shit fall through, as you can see. I really need to sweep up in here. But you can see what the electromagnetic field caused by the welding cables aligns all the filings. I've always found that pretty interesting. Yeah, anyway, they should have cooled off enough by now. Let's weld them on there, shall we? If you're checking the pitch between two holes, you don't measure the centres, because that's arbitrary. You go, oh gee whiz, I wonder where the centre of the hole is. You go to the edge of the hole. So if we look at that one, the edge of the hole to the edge of the hole, I don't know if the camera's picking up exactly, but it's 43 millimeters. So there we go. So you never measure to the center of a hole, because you're guessing. You measure from the edge of the hole to the edge of the hole. So obviously this edge to this edge, and that gives you 43 millimeters. So I'll just tack that one on there. Once again, put your gloves on. It's not about the heat, because that's why I don't really wear welder's gloves. I find them a bit clumsy. I like these rigger's gloves, because you don't usually get your hand that close that the heat affected your hand too much. So what I'll do is I'll just tack this one here on. Whoops. Now that's caused by bad earth. I've been a bit lazy. There we go. So this one's got to be 43. I'm just checking end that's pretty square. That end's pretty square. Now with these I'll probably have to grind a slight taper on them to get them to go in properly. So if I put that 43 to 43, oops, way over there. Oh, it's going to be a little bit further than I thought. So there to there. Just a little tiny tack weld, because it might need to come off again. Right, so that goes in now. So if I can weld that without distorting those pins, right, so that now fits. Let's get the focus. That now fits in the centrifugal clutch I've got to take off. It looks a bit rough, but it'll do the job. So I'm just going to round the ends of them off a little bit, and then we'll try it and see how we go. Let's see if my theory about it being right hand thread is correct. Yep, it was right hand thread, I thought so. So that off is wrong. So I'm glad I looked at that, or I'd be rattling against that and swearing, and right, that doesn't look too bad, to be honest. Those faces aren't really scored, so I wonder why it's slipping. Well, I've got a spare. I'll go and get the spare and see if that... No, I can still see the... Still see the marks where that was machined brand new. So why is it slippery? Don't know. Don't think it's any of this gunk. This gunk doesn't seem to be getting in there. Alright, well, there was no getting it off without that little tool, which, like I said, fitted in there like that, and that worked a treat. So there we go. If you need to get one of them off, it might be worth making a little tool. And I can put that in my spares box now, and that can be in the spares box for the doctor. So I'll go and get the other clutch and see if it looks any different to this. Right, so I've got my spare, and it looks the same as the old one, which is always nice. I don't actually see any wear on this one. It's a bit polished. You see that one's still got the, that'd be a sintered metal casting, I'd say. So I reckon that's just a bit polished. So what I might do, I might just rough that up a wee bit. And has that got Loctite on it? It's got some sort of thread locker on there. No, you don't need that. They've done away with that, so thankfully I looked at the thread. The new one doesn't have that. Just make sure it's the right sort of thread. Yeah, okay, so the new one's going to fit. I've had this for quite a while, but I didn't have an impact gun, so I couldn't get that off. I tried hitting it with a hammer. You know, that's the first thing you do, is you try to hit it with a hammer, but it didn't work. So see, that goes through there. That's that's turned out to be quite a good little tool, that one. So never throw away your sockets, because you never know when you might need to weld them to something to make a special tool. So that, yep, so I'll do that back up, put this all back together and see how we go. Now that was the one that I had trouble getting to before. It had a screw in there, which took me yonks to get out the last time I had this apart. So I put a stud in there and I put a nut on it, because I don't know how they even got that bolt in. Because the bolt I'm talking about is that bolt there in the factory. Now how have they got that in? Up at an angle and through there? God knows. Anyway. But apart from that, it seems like a pretty good bit of gear. This rubber's on its way out, but I can always make a new one of them. That's just a piece of rubber. It's not even insertion rubber. Insertion rubber is rubber that's got canvas through the middle of it. Well, that's what I call it anyway. That's what I've always heard it called. Anyway, starting to rant a bit, so I'll clean all this up, put this back together. I don't think I've got a torque spec for this. I think I'll just do it up with Makita till it goes click, and see how we go. So now I'm going to fit the new one. Doesn't have the word off in the wrong direction, so I'll get that. See, it's definitely right hand thread. Look at that, definitely right hand thread. So that's really odd, but there you go. If you look at the old one, it had off, and to screw it off that way, that would imply it was left-hand thread, but it definitely unscrewed that way. Definitely. So it's definitely right-hand thread. In fact, I've checked it with a bolt, and it's definitely right-hand thread. So, yeah, sometimes you've got to be more observant than just taking things like that for granted that they've got it correct. So I'll spin that up, put my special tool on there. Now I'm not going to give that too much of a because that will, there we go, that will tighten as I use it. Because as you can imagine, that'll grip on there and that'll tighten that up. So I'm not going to tighten that up too much. I might just give it a wee bit of a tap-taparoo. Nothing too testicle. So now I'm just going to get my Dremel tool and just clean up that face in there, because that's a little bit polished. And to be honest, I don't know what else I can do with this. So I'll do that now. So I've got my Dremel tool. It's not actually a Dremel, it's a cheap Chinese one, but it's got the same size spindle, so it takes the Dremel tools, which is the main thing. Works fine, I haven't wrecked it yet. One thing that did happen though was the switch failed, because obviously it had a little same colour switch as the body, and you won't believe it, that's a switch out of a stab mixer or something. I think it looks like it fitted perfectly, so yeah, very lucky there. I'm not sure what I would have managed to do. I probably would have had to put like a big toggle switch there or something, but anyway, so that's that fixed. So let's Dremel this inside face of this and see how we go. Just going to blow out the compressed air, so cover your eyes. There we go. That's better, that's got rid of that polish off of there. It's time to put this thing back together. So I've got my little tray of bits. The 6mm nut and the washer go on this stud, and that's that dirty one there, so that goes on there like that. That bush goes in, then the bowl goes in like that. So this is what they call a shock absorber, this spring piece here. So you can sort of imagine there's a bolt above it, a bolt below it, and there's two pieces of the linkage. So the theory is that it absorbs some of the vibration, and it does. Like I said, this isn't an expensive bit of gear, but it's pretty good. It does the job for us. Pin and the cotter pin. Well, cotter pin down and job done. Let's go and see if it works. Choke off. Yeah, I thought so. I hit a tree root, see that? That's what stops your auger from cutting. When you hit a tree root, you get what looks like rope wrapped around the cutting blades. But it seems to be working alright, so I think I'll call that job done. So, in conclusion, even if the rest of the video you don't give a shit about, which is understandable, I don't go through every video that I look at on YouTube as well. The main takeaway is don't believe everything that you read, because as you saw, that unscrewed in that direction. It's a right hand thread. So that little sintered metal casting, that's wrong. So fortunately for me there was a thread and a half, no, probably one thread sticking out the top. Just enough for me to spot that it was a right hand thread. And then I made this tool, and I was able to spin it off with my impact gun. So yeah, don't believe everything you read. See if you can observe a bit more and don't take for granted what you get on these things here. And also, it took me about 10 or 15 minutes to make that tool. So that will go in my tub of special tools now. Hang on, just focus. That will go in my tub of special tools. I know what it's for. I don't have to label this one. But they're not exactly parallel, but they worked. So there you go. Got a welder and some old sockets, and it's amazing what you can get, what you can get done.
Okay, thanks for watching. As you can see, some simple jobs can be made into complex jobs by incorrectly marked parts. I'm so lucky I was able to spot the direction of the threads before I gave the clutch a good hammering with the impact wrench. If this has helped you, then let me know in the comments. Make sure to click like and subscribe, and don't forget that notification bell too. Well, I reckon that's it for today, so bye for now.